Fire has a sound. It's not the roaring boom you hear on TV, but a hissing, devouring noise that presses right against your eardrums. It licked at the wooden door frames, popping and cracking like a million hungry locusts chewing through my life. My hair caught fire first, giving off the sickening stench of singed protein. Then came my skin. The searing heat blistered every inch of me. The pain was like being thrown alive into a vat of boiling oil. I lay on the living room floor, my legs pinned under a collapsed beam, choking on thick smoke. Every futile breath felt like swallowing razor blades. My vision was blurred by black smoke and scalding tears, but I could still clearly see the two figures at the door. My husband, Gary, and my twin sister, Susan. 35 years of marriage. I had been like a perpetual motion machine, giving everything to this family. I nursed his sickly mother, raised our rebellious son, and managed all his social obligations so he could climb the corporate ladder in peace. And my sister Susan? She had been the princess of our family since childhood. She was his sister-in-law in name, but in reality, she was more like the other mistress of this house. "Gary, I'm scared," Susan's cry, with that trademark pitiful tremble, was like a needle piercing straight into Gary's weak spot. The fire was growing, and the doorway was the only way out. Gary's face was written with struggle. His eyes darted back and forth between me and Susan. In that moment, I still held on to a shred of ridiculous hope. I was his wife, the mother of his child, the woman who had shared his bed for 35 years. He would save me. He had to. Then I saw his choice. He rushed toward Susan, scooped her tightly into his arms, shielding her with his body, and kept reassuring her. "Susie, don't be scared, I've got you." They were leaving. They were going to walk right past me, toward the only exit. In that instant, my heart hurt more than my burning body. I reached out, using the last of my strength to grab his pant leg, my throat forcing out a raspy, broken sound. "Gary," he looked down at me. There was no love in that look, no pity, not even a hesitation, only disgust and resolve. To get Susan out faster, he lifted his foot, wearing the leather shoe I had polished for him countless times, and stomped down hard, mercilessly, on the back of my hand. The sound of cracking bone was audible, but I couldn't feel the pain anymore. He stepped on my hand, held my sister, and rushed out of the inferno. I lay in the flames, watching his back disappear. Through the thick smoke, I clearly heard him screaming her name. "Susie! Susie! Not Sarah!" My world turned to ash in that moment. In the final second before my consciousness dissipated, I thought, this is fine. What I owed this family, along with this life, is now paid in full. Suddenly, my eyes snapped open. What greeted me wasn't the fires of hell, but a familiar ceiling patterned with pale yellow flowers. The air didn't smell of burnt flesh, it smelled of dust dancing in the morning sunlight streaming through the curtain gap. I slowly rolled my eyes and saw the calendar on the nightstand. October 24th, 1993. I was reborn. I sat up slowly, looking down at my hands. They hadn't been devoured by flames or crushed by a leather shoe. Although rough from years of housework with enlarged knuckles, they were whole. I was back. Back 1 month before the accidental fire that would take my life. There was no huge rush of ecstasy at surviving a disaster. My heart was as calm as an ancient well, without a single ripple. In my past life, that fire had burned away not just my body, but the last shred of affection I had for this world. I threw off the covers and stepped barefoot onto the cold concrete floor. The mirror reflected a pale, exhausted face. 38 years old, fine lines already crowding the corners of my eyes, a gaze filled with dissolving numbness. This was me, Sarah. A woman who had dedicated half her life to her family, only to be used as a stepping stone. Gary's voice came from outside the door, carrying his usual waking-up arrogance. "Sarah, are you up? Hurry up with breakfast. I have an important meeting at the office today. I can't be late." Immediately following was Susan's voice from the guest room, whining sweetly. "Sis, I want that pork and century egg congee you make. Put extra pork floss on it, okay?" They didn't know yet. The Sarah who responded to their every demand had died in the fire. I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring quietly at myself in the mirror, and then pulled a cold smile, the first smile in 35 years that was just for me. This time, I chose to leave. No tyrfelakiesaschens, no hysterical revenge. I was going to uproot myself from their lives in the calmest, most absolute way possible. I would let them have what they wanted, let these two soulmates live together happily ever after. And I would fly far away to live a life without them. After all, my absence would be the greatest punishment for them. On the first day of my rebirth, I acted no differently than usual. At 7 a.m. sharp, I served Gary his breakfast. A bowl of millet porridge heated just right, 2 tea eggs, and the pickled vegetables he loved from Mr. Wong's shop downstairs. "Why are you so slow today?" he complained while tying his tie, not even looking up. I didn't apologize like I usually would. I just placed the chopsticks gently by his hand and said, "Eat. It's getting cold." My voice was calm, devoid of emotion. He seemed to sense something, looking up to frown at me, but the urgency of his schedule stopped him from thinking too much. He ate hurriedly and went to work. Then came Susan. She walked out of her room rubbing her eyes, wearing a lace nightgown. Seeing the plain white porridge on the table, she immediately pouted. "Sis, where's my pork congee?" "Didn't make it," I answered, clearing Gary's dishes. "Why not?" She stomped her foot, her tone full of disbelief. "I told you I wanted it. You always make it for me." "Didn't feel like it today." I looked at her, my eyes flat. Susan froze. She had probably never seen me look at her like that. In her memory, I was always the gentle, accommodating big sister who gave her whatever she wanted. She stunned for a few seconds, then her eyes reddened. She sat in the chair, silent and looking like she was about to cry. This was her go-to trick. Whenever she made this face, the whole family would blame me, and Gary would be the first to comfort her. In the past, my heart would have softened, and I would have rushed to the kitchen to make it. But now I just put the wash bowl in the cabinet, turned around, and went back to my room, closing the door. I heard Susan's suppressed, aggrieved sobbing outside. I heard it, but my heart would never be moved by it again. Back in my room, I locked the door and dragged a dusty wooden chest from the deepest part of the closet. This was the dowry my mother gave me when I married. Inside were some heirlooms she had left behind. I carefully pushed aside the yellowing old clothes and felt a hard object wrapped in red cloth at the bottom. Unwrapping it revealed a pair of heavy gold dragon and phoenix bangles. My grandmother had passed them to my mother, and she to me. All these years, no matter how hard things got, I couldn't bear to touch them. Not when Gary's business failed and he owed debts, not even when we couldn't scrape together the surgery fees for his mother. I always felt this was my last token and memory. But now it was my ticket to a new life. I hid the bangles on my person and dug out an old envelope. It was yellowed with age, bearing foreign stamps, sent by Uncle Simon. Simon was a distant comrade of my father's, his closest brother in arms. After my father passed, our families kept in touch for a few years. Later, in the early 80s, Simon's family immigrated to the United States. Before leaving, he left this address and told me that if I ever hit an obstacle I couldn't overcome, I could find him. For years, I treated that as a polite pleasantry. My life was bound to Gary and this home. What obstacle could I possibly not overcome? Now I understood. Uncle Simon might have seen something back then. I carefully copied the address and zip code onto a slip of paper, then shoved the letter and the wooden chest back under the bed. Having done all this, I felt like a spy who had completed a secret mission. No excitement, just a methodical calmness. That afternoon, using the excuse of going to the market, I took a bus to the neighboring town. Relationships in our small city were a tangled web. If I sold the bangles at a local jeweler, word would reach Gary's ears before noon. The jewelry store owner in the next town was a shrewd middle-aged man. He torched the gold with a flame, bit it with his teeth, and finally quoted a price. It was lower than I expected, but I didn't haggle. I took the cash decisively. Walking out of the shop, clutching that thick stack of bills warm from a stranger's hands, I felt no reluctance. Sentimentality couldn't fill a stomach, and it certainly couldn't save my life. On the way back, I passed a travel agency with a sign advertising passport and visa services. I went in and asked about the fastest way to get to the US. The clerk gave me a pile of complicated forms, telling me I needed employer verification, proof of assets, proof of kinship. I had none of these. The only way was Uncle Simon. That night, I went to the town's biggest post office and wrote a letter to him. I didn't mention the rebirth. I just said father had appeared in a dream telling me to visit him, and that I wanted to go out and see the world. I begged him to send an invitation letter for a family visit and the necessary documents for a visa. By the time I finished, it was late. When I got home, the living room lights were still on. Gary and Susan were sitting on the sofa, looking unhappy. Seeing me enter, Gary immediately stood up, his voice suppressing anger. "Sarah, what is wrong with you today? Susan said you bullied her. She hasn't eaten all day. As a big sister, don't you know how to care for your sibling?" Susan's eyes were swollen red. She had obviously been crying for a long time. She hid behind Gary, adding softly and pitifully, "Gary, don't blame Sarah. Maybe I did something to upset her." This practiced duet. In my past life, I would have panicked, apologizing while rushing to the kitchen to make Susan a late-night snack. But I just looked at them quietly, put the groceries on the table, and said calmly, "I'm tired. I'm going to sleep." My reaction was completely outside their expectations. Gary froze, seemingly trying to organize harsher words, but I had already walked past them into the bedroom and locked the door. I could hear Gary's furious roaring from the living room. "Sarah, what is this attitude? Come out here and explain yourself." I ignored him. I lay on the bed, smoothing out the money from selling the bangles under my pillow. This was my money, my capital to escape this prison. The roaring outside gradually turned into impatient cursing, then finally silence. I knew Gary was definitely comforting Susan right now, whispering softly to her, pouring her water, maybe even cooking her a bowl of noodles he could never get quite right. None of it had anything to do with me anymore. I closed my eyes and slept dreamlessly. In the days that followed, I lived like a ghost in their midst. I cooked, washed, and cleaned as usual, but I no longer revolved around their needs. I cooked what I wanted, they ate when I was ready. Susan's whining, Gary's accusations, it all went in one ear and out the other. My world was separated by an invisible wall. Inside was my meticulous planning for the future, outside was their chaotic daily drama. This abnormal calm was like a soft thorn, making Gary restless. He started testing me in various ways. He would deliberately buy Susan expensive gifts in front of me to gauge my reaction. I would just glance at them and say, "Nice." He would come home drunk late at night, hugging me and asking over and over, "Sarah, do you not love me anymore?" I didn't answer. I just pushed him away and covered him with a blanket. My indifference caused him a panic he had never felt before. Perhaps he thought I was just throwing a tantrum and would soon revert to the submissive Sarah. He didn't know that Sarah had already burned to ash in a fire a month from now. Half a month later, I received Uncle Simon's reply. The envelope was thick. Inside was not only a signed invitation letter, but also photocopies of various asset proofs and a heartfelt letter addressed to the visa officer. At the end of his letter to me, Simon wrote in bold strokes, "Sarah, no matter what happens, Uncle Simon's place is always your home." Clutching that thin sheet of paper, I felt warmth in my eyes for the first time since my rebirth. Everything was ready, I just needed the final push. It was time to settle things with them. I chose the day before Gary's department was set to announce the promotion list for deputy manager. Everyone thought he had it in the bag, and he had been riding high on that confidence. I told him that to celebrate his promotion in advance, I wanted to cook a big dinner and invite his parents over. His parents meant his parents, mine had passed long ago. For years, I had treated his parents with the same filial piety as my own. Gary was very satisfied with my suggestion, his smile looking almost genuine. He probably thought this was my signal of surrender, proof that I was finally ending this bizarre Cold War and returning to the role of the virtuous wife. He patted my shoulder, his tone gentle. "You always think of everything. Thanks for your hard work, Sarah." I smiled and said nothing. That afternoon, I spent the last of my pocket change. I bought the pork belly he loved, the aged liquor his father liked, the soy sauce bones his mother loved to gnaw on. And for Susan, oh, Susan wasn't picky. She liked anything as long as someone else peeled it for her. I shut myself in the kitchen, the exhaust fan roaring like it was playing the finale of my 35-year career as a housewife. I made braised pork, Oil-braised prawns, steamed sea bass, sweet and sour ribs, a table full of food, almost entirely their favorites. I put extra care into every dish, as if pouring half a lifetime of culinary skill into this one meal. This was both a farewell dinner and a period mark I was drawing for myself. At 6 p.m., Gary arrived with his parents on time. His mother started nitpicking the moment she walked in. "Oh my, why is the house so messy? Sarah, don't you know how to tidy up? Gary is so busy with work, and you just enjoy your leisure at home, can't even do the housework right." I turned a deaf ear, smiling as I invited them to sit. Susan came out of her room dressed up like a peacock, affectionately hooking her arm through Gary's. "Gary, you look so handsome today." Gary clearly enjoyed it, his face blossoming into a smile. The family sat down happily, as if the coldness of the past 2 weeks had never happened. At the table, my father-in-law raised his glass spiritedly saying, "Once our Gary becomes deputy manager, he'll be a leader. Sarah, you have to take even better care of him. Don't drag him down." My mother-in-law placed a large chunk of braised pork in Susan's bowl, saying lovingly, "Susie, eat more. Look how thin you are. Unlike some people who sit at home eating idle rice, getting strong as an ox." I kept my head down, shoveling plain white rice into my mouth, saying nothing. Gary cleared his throat, smoothing things over. "Mom, we're eating." "Why say that? Here, Sarah, you have a piece of meat too." He placed a piece of fatty pork in my bowl, his tone carrying a charity-like tolerance. Everyone enjoyed that meal except me. They loudly discussed Gary's bright future after the promotion, planning to swap for a bigger house, buy a new car. In their blueprint, I was still the background scenery, the nanny responsible for cooking, cleaning, and serving them in their prosperity. I listened quietly, like watching a farce that had nothing to do with me. Only when the wine was drunk and the food was eaten did I slowly put down my chopsticks. I stood up, went into the bedroom, and came out holding a document. I gently placed it on the lazy Susan and spun it in front of Gary. "What's this?" he asked, puzzled and tipsy. "Divorce agreement." My voice wasn't loud, but it was like a bomb, instantly silencing the noisy dining room. Everyone froze, looking at me in disbelief. The smile on Gary's face stiffened. He picked up the papers, glanced at them, then slammed them onto the table, roaring, "Sarah, are you crazy?" "I'm not crazy. I'm very lucid." I looked into his eyes, enunciating every word. "Gary, let's get a divorce." "Why?" His face flushed red like an enraged bull. "How have I wronged you? You're making a scene at a time like this." "You haven't wronged me." I shook my head, my gaze sweeping over everyone at the table. "I have wronged myself." I turned to my mother-in-law. "Mom, all these years I've served you, prepared for your old age. I owe you nothing." I turned to my father-in-law. "Dad, when you were hospitalized, I stayed awake for 3 days and nights to care for you. I owe you nothing either." Finally, my gaze landed on Susan, who was looking at me in terror, as if recognizing this sister for the first time. "Susan, I raised you. I never shortchanged you on food or clothes. Even your college tuition was money I earned working odd jobs. I owe you even less." Finished, I looked back at Gary, my tone as calm as if discussing the weather. "I don't want the house. We don't have savings anyway. Take whatever you want from the house. I have only one requirement. We go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow to process the papers." The room was deadly silent. They were stunned by my rebellious speech. Finally, my mother-in-law was the first to react. She slapped her thigh and began to wail. "Oh my God, there's no justice. What sin did the Gu family commit to marry such a jinx? Just as Gary is about to be promoted, you come to ruin it. What kind of heart do you have?" Gary snapped out of it too, pointing at my nose and cursing. "Sarah, don't take my kindness for granted. I'm telling you, I don't agree to this divorce. Don't even think about it." I didn't argue. I just looked at Gary quietly, then spoke slowly with a tone that was almost cruelly distinct. "Thank you for your hard work these 35 years, wasting so much time on a boring woman like me. Not anymore. From now on, you and your family should live happily together." With that, I turned and walked back to my room, locking the door again. This time, I ignored the cursing, begging, and hysterical crying outside. I knew that the moment that door closed, the old world had completely collapsed, and my new world was arriving. They thought I was just venting, pulling another cry-scream-threaten stunt for attention. The next morning, when I walked out of the room pulling a beat-up suitcase, they realized I was serious. Gary hadn't slept all night, his eyes bloodshot. He blocked the door, voice hoarse. "Sarah, do you have to do this? Years of marriage, and you're throwing it away just like that." Marriage. I looked at him, finding it almost funny. Gary, ask yourself, is there really any affection left between us? Or just habit? The habit of you summoning me and dismissing me whenever you please. He was speechless. My mother-in-law rushed from the sofa, grabbing my arm, starting her emotional blackmail. "Sarah, Mom knows I was wrong before. I have a sharp tongue, don't take it to heart. If you leave, how will this family live? Gary is a man, he can't do anything, and Susie is still little." "She's not little. She's 3 minutes younger than me." I calmly pried her hand off. "Mom, don't worry. When I'm gone, Susie will take care of you. She's so kind. She loves her Gary so much, she won't ignore you." My words were like a knife piercing through the fake warmth. Susan's face went red then white, hiding behind Gary, afraid to look at me. Gary's patience finally ran out. He stepped forward, trying to grab my suitcase. I said, "I don't agree to the divorce. You're not going anywhere today. Let go." My voice turned cold. "I won't. If you dare walk out this door today, we will see what happens." I cut him off, staring straight into his eyes. "Gary, do you think I'm still the Sarah who does whatever you say?" I didn't waste any more breath. I turned to the living room drawer and pulled out a thick notebook with a worn cover. "What's that?" He looked at me warily. "The ledger." I opened the first page, where elegant handwriting recorded, March 1978, Gary's mother sick, borrowed $300. May 1980, Gary's brother's wedding, gift money $500, paid by me. I turned the pages one by one, reading entry by entry. From the start of our marriage, every major expense in this house, from toys for nephews to renovations for the in-laws' old house, most of it was paid for by money I saved from odd jobs and frugality. 1992, Susan wanted a dress, $180. Gary said, "Your sister doesn't like to dress up. She won't use it, just buy it for Susie." When I read the last entry, the living room was silent. Gary's face was purple. His mother turned her head away in guilt. I closed the ledger and placed it gently on the coffee table. "I don't want you to pay this back. I just want to tell you from the first day I married into this family, I have been giving endlessly. Now, I don't want to give any more. I don't owe your family anything." I pulled my suitcase and walked around them toward the door. This time no one dared to stop me. My steps were firm and steady. Behind me were their shocked, angry, yet speechless stares. Just as I grabbed the doorknob, Susan suddenly rushed up and hugged me from behind, wailing loudly. "Sis, don't go. What will I do if you leave? I can't do anything. I won't be able to take care of Gary and Mom and Dad. I beg you, don't go." Her cry was shrill, full of dependency and terror. This was perhaps the only honest thing she'd said in her life. She knew better than anyone that once I left, the umbrella that sheltered her and cleaned up her messes would vanish, and she would have to face the trivialities and filth of life herself. I stopped, but I didn't look back. With a near-cruel calm, I pried her fingers off me, one by one. "Susan," I said, "it's time you grew up." The door closed, shutting all their voices behind it. Walking down the stairs, the morning sun stung my eyes. I didn't look back. I knew there were eyes watching me from the window upstairs, but I didn't care. Severing roots is painful, but only by doing so could I, a tree hollowed out by parasites, sprout anew in fresh soil. Dragging my suitcase, I walked into the city's morning fog, toward a future full of unknowns and hope. After leaving that house, I didn't go straight to get my visa. I knew Gary wouldn't let it go easily. He would lay traps at the Civil Affairs Bureau, and at any relative's house I might run to. I checked into the cheapest motel in town. The room was cramped and damp, with only a creaky single bed and a battered desk, but this small space gave me a sense of safety and freedom I'd never felt before. I organized my visa materials over and over to ensure nothing was missing. Then I waited. I waited for the mandatory cooling-off period to pass, and for Gary's patience to run out. Just as I expected, for the first few days, my pager was flooded with messages from Gary. First came angry demands. Sarah, where are you? Do you want this family or not? Then threats. I'm telling you, if you don't come back, I'll go to your workplace and make a scene, ruin your reputation. Then it turned to compromising persuasion. Okay, stop messing around, come back. I know you felt wronged, I'll change, okay? Finally begging. Sarah, I was wrong, please come back, the family really can't function without you. I didn't reply to a single one. After a week, the messages slowed down. He realized these methods didn't work on me anymore. During this time, Susan sent word through mutual friends, weeping that the house was in chaos, my mother-in-law had fallen ill from anger, and Gary was burned out, begging me to return. I just asked the friend to pass back one sentence. That is your life, it has nothing to do with me. A month later, the waiting period ended. I timed it perfectly, waiting at the Civil Affairs Bureau the minute they opened. Gary didn't show. Maybe he thought I wouldn't dare, or maybe the mess at home kept him occupied. I called his office and told him if he wasn't there in 10 minutes, I would send copies of our divorce papers and that ledger to his newly appointed boss's desk. In those days, a man who abandoned his wife and child couldn't get far in politics. Within 10 minutes, Gary appeared at the door, face pale. He said nothing, just glared at me with poisonous eyes. We didn't speak during the process. When the clerk handed me the green divorce certificate, I saw his fists clench so tight the veins popped. Walking out, he finally snapped, grabbing my arm and gritting his teeth. Sarah, are you satisfied? Hardly satisfied. I calmly pulled my arm back. I just took back what belonged to me, freedom. You'll regret this, he hissed. Without me, without this family, you are nothing. Is that so? I looked at him with a faint smile. We'll see. I turned and walked away, giving him no chance to speak again. With the divorce certificate, I immediately went to the provincial capital to submit my visa application. Because Uncle Simon's documents were complete, and my reason for visiting a sick elder was compelling, the process was incredibly smooth. While waiting for the visa, I enrolled in a crash course for English, absorbing knowledge like a dried sponge. I knew language would be the first cornerstone of my new life. Another month later, I had my visa and plane ticket. Departure day was a clear winter day. Wearing a new camel hair coat, the first expensive item I'd ever bought myself, and dragging the suitcase containing my entire life, I stood in the airport departure hall. Watching the crowds, I felt no confusion or fear, only a cold excitement like heading into battle. Just as I prepared to go through security, the airport broadcast chimed. Attention passenger Sarah Sue, you have an urgent call. Please proceed to the information desk. I froze. I knew it was Gary. He had found me. I hesitated for a few seconds, then walked to the desk. I thought before leaving, I should put a final, definitive period on this 35-year entanglement. On the phone was Gary's exasperated voice, mixed with Susan's crying in the background. Sarah, where are you going? You're abandoning us? He was practically roaring. I'm going to live my own life. Your life is us. What about Mom? She's sick, the doctor said she might not make it. You won't even see her one last time? You heartless woman. My heart pricked slightly, not for his mother, but because he was using the same old trick. Gary. My voice was flat, without a ripple. If she were truly critically ill, you would be at the hospital right now, not calling me from who knows where. Your lies don't work on me anymore. Silence on the other end for a few seconds, then his voice softened, trembling with begging. Sarah, don't go, okay? I can't live without you. This family can't function without you. Without me, you'll just live uncomfortably. But without myself, I will die. The boarding announcement sounded, calling passengers for the flight to the U.S. I'm leaving, I said. Gary, goodbye. And I mean that literally. I didn't wait for an answer. I hung up, turned to the security checkpoint, and shut that world of lies, blackmail, and despair behind me forever. The plane taxied, accelerated, and thrust into the sky. I watched the city I had lived in for 38 years shrink until it was a blur. I didn't shed a tear. I just leaned back, closed my eyes, and felt a freedom I had never known. Goodbye, Gary. Goodbye, Susan. Goodbye to the weak, humble Sarah who lived her whole life for others. Flying over the ocean, the plane landed at JFK International Airport in the evening local time. Walking out, the massive culture shock and language barrier hit me like an invisible wall. Strange faces everywhere, ears filled with a language I didn't understand. December in New York was bone-chilling. I pulled my coat tighter, but the cold rose from within my heart. My life, from this moment on, was resetting to zero. Uncle Simon and his wife, Aunt Linda, were there to pick me up. Seeing them, warmth finally surged in my heart. Simon looked much older than I remembered, but his spirit was hale, his eyes gentle like my father's. Aunt Linda was a warm, straightforward Shanghai woman. She gave me a huge hug. "Child, you've suffered." She patted my back, speaking in accented Mandarin. That one sentence broke the dam of tears I had held back the entire flight. I didn't tell them the real reason for the divorce, only that Gary and I had irreconcilable differences. They didn't pry. They treated me like a daughter, giving me the most considerate care. They rented a small studio for me in Queens and helped me get basic supplies. Simon stuffed a thick envelope into my hand. "Sarah, this is a loan from your uncle. Pay it back when you're settled. Don't be polite, or I'll get angry." Clutching that envelope, I knew it was my lifeline. I didn't refuse, I just bowed deeply. This kindness, I would remember for a lifetime. The early days were incredibly hard. The little English I learned in the crash course was useless in real life. I couldn't understand the supermarket cashier, couldn't read bus signs, couldn't even order a meal. I felt like a toddler in the land of giants, terrified of everything. To survive and to pay Simon back, I needed work immediately. But with no degree, no skills, and no language, my only option was bottom-rung physical labor. I went to Chinatown. The familiar characters and dialects gave me a shred of security. I found a dishwasher job in a crowded, greasy Chinese restaurant. The owner, a shrewd Cantonese man, looked me over and said in broken Mandarin, 10 hours a day, $10 an hour, one meal included. You do it. I'll do it. I answered without hesitation. And so, I became a dishwasher at the Jade Garden. That was the darkest, most grit-building time of my life. The kitchen was hot and humid, permanently smelling of grease and swill. The dishes piled up like mountains. My back felt broken by the end of the day. In winter, the icy water stung my joints. In summer, the scalding water turned my hands red. My hands, once despised by Gary for being rough, were now cracked and peeling from detergent and grease, new wounds layering over old ones. My coworkers were mostly new immigrants like me, enduring silently for survival. No one complained. Time was money. Getting off work late in winter, I'd drag my leaden legs home. New York nights were dazzling yet indifferent. The neon of skyscrapers couldn't light up my outsider loneliness. Back in my tiny room, I forced myself to learn English. I wrote words on paper scraps, sticking them on walls, the headboard, the mirror. I mimicked the radio pronunciation until my tongue twisted. Many times, I fell asleep at the desk, waking up with book creases on my face. I had moments of weakness. Once I broke a plate. The owner rushed over, pointing at my nose, cursing in a mix of Cantonese and English, and deducted 10 times the plate's cost from my wages. That night, looking at my haggard reflection, I broke down crying. Why come here to suffer? Back home, I had no self, but at least I had food and shelter. Gary's face, Susan's face, my mother-in-law's face flashed like a carousel. Then the fire. Gary's foot on my hand. His screaming, "Susie!" The crying stopped abruptly. I wiped my tears, looked at myself, and my eyes hardened. No. I can't go back. Life here was bitter, but every cent was earned by me. Every improvement was my own effort. My personality was independent. My life was mine. This grounded feeling was something I hadn't possessed in 38 years. From that day, I stopped pitying myself. I proactively changed. I used lunch breaks to help the chefs prep, learning their signature dishes. I forced myself to talk to the waitstaff, even just a simple word. I found that when I stopped being afraid, the world wasn't so scary. Gradually, I understood simple conversations. I joked with delivery drivers. 6 months later, a waiter quit. I went to the owner, using my practiced, stuttering English to ask for the chance. Moving from the back to the front, my wages doubled. I could finally pay back a small part of Simon's loan. That day, holding my first paycheck as a waitress, I went to a clothing store in Chinatown and bought a new red dress. Putting it on, I saw a stranger in the mirror. Thin, but with a look called hope in her eyes. Yes, I was alive, and I was going to live better than anyone. From dishwasher to waitress was a step, but not a foothold. I knew waiting tables wasn't the end game. I needed a career. The opportunity appeared inadvertently. Jade Garden was busy, especially at lunch with office workers. But the place was small, so many did takeout. I noticed they mostly ordered a few specific, quick rice bowls. At the time, Chinatown had many restaurants, but few offered standardized, clean, fast Chinese food for corporate workers. A seed sprouted in my mind. I started market research on my days off. I walked through Midtown and downtown, observing Western fast food models, standardized menus, assembly lines, clean environments, speed. I tasted takeout from dozens of Chinese places. The problems: too oily, messy packaging, inconsistent speed. My concept became clear. Open a Chinese fast food spot. Healthy, tasty, fast. A simple menu of popular rice bowls like kung pao chicken, mapo tofu, tomato and eggs, but lighter, healthier. Packaging designed to be clean and portable. And guaranteed speed. The idea kept me up at night, but reality hit. I had no money. Rent, renovation, equipment, huge costs. My savings were a drop in the bucket. I told Uncle Simon and Aunt Linda. I thought they'd call me crazy. Instead, Simon was silent for a long time, then said solemnly, "Sarah, this is solid. Your dad always said you were quiet but had a plan. Once you decide, 9 oxen can't pull you back. You're just like him." Linda added excitedly, "Yes, we Shanghainese love good business sense. You've got it. Don't worry about money." Their trust moved me beyond words. Simon took out his savings. Linda sold jewelry she'd kept for years. They said, "This isn't a gift, it's an investment. We're shareholders waiting for dividends." Holding that check, I swore, "Uncle Simon, Aunt Linda, if I lose your money, I'll work like an ox for you for the rest of my life." With funds in hand, I moved fast. I rented a tiny storefront near Wall Street. I painted walls and laid floors myself. I bought second-hand furniture. I refined my recipes, adapting my Jade Garden skills with Western health concepts. I adjusted the kung pao chicken recipe a dozen times until flavor, color, and speed were perfectly balanced. I slept 3 hours a night, winding myself tight like a clock. 2 months later, Land's Kitchen opened. Day 1 was dismal, sold less than 20 portions. Closing up, looking at the unsold food, panic set in. Had I failed? Then Simon came. He said nothing, just ate a bowl of kung pao chicken. Wiping his mouth, he said, "Tastes good. Cleaner than the old-timers in Chinatown. Don't rush. Good things take time." The next day, I didn't give up. I packed a dozen sample boxes and ran to the biggest office building nearby, handing them out for free in the lobby. The sleek packaging and aroma attracted attention. The effect was instant. Day 3, a line formed. Day 4, the line went out the door. Day 5, we sold out by 1 p.m. Land's Kitchen was a hit. Clean, delicious, fast, fair price, word spread through Wall Street. People drove across town for my mapo tofu. My life flipped. I was busy from procurement to cashiering. I hired 2 helpers, but kept the sauce recipes to myself. At the end of the first month, after costs, I netted $5,000. Holding that cash, my hands trembled. This was my first pot of gold, earned with my own wisdom and sweat. That night, I closed early. I walked into a high-end department store on 5th Avenue I'd never dared enter. I bought a well-tailored cashmere coat. It cost a week's profit. But standing in the mirror, I knew it was worth it. The woman in the reflection stood tall, eyes bright. Despite the fatigue, a confidence radiated from her bones. I was no longer Sarah who needed to depend on anyone. I was my own mountain. Once the business stabilized, I paid back Simon and Linda within a year, plus a hefty dividend. Linda beamed. bragging to her card buddies about her business genius niece. 2 years later, I bought a small condo in Brooklyn with a sunny balcony. I furnished it warmly. I finally had a real home in this strange city. During this time, Simon went back to China for business. He visited my apartment upon return, hesitating before speaking. "Sarah, I saw your sister Susan." My hand holding the teacup paused, but my face remained calm. "MH. I didn't want to tell you, but Linda said you should know. Not to make you look back, but to let you see clearly how right your choice was." Simon had met Gary at a business dinner. Gary looked old and haggard, half gray hair, none of his former spirit. He drank alone, barely speaking. Simon heard that after the missed promotion, Gary made constant errors at work and was shunted to a useless department to rot until retirement. I felt nothing. It was expected. When a man spends his energy on petty family drama, his career naturally fails. After dinner, I saw Susan picking him up, Simon sneered. "She's changed too. Fat tacky." She saw me froze, then rushed up crying. From Simon's retelling, I pieced together the scene after I left. The Gu household had collapsed. Susan couldn't cook or use a washing machine. The house smelled of takeout and instant noodles. My mother-in-law, sick from anger and lack of care, worsened quickly. Susan stopped delivering meals to the hospital. Gary ran between work and the hospital, burned out. Without me as the buffer, their selfishness collided. They fought endlessly about chores. Susan told Simon that Gary had changed, that he yelled at her. She said she regretted it. She said she shouldn't have. "She shouldn't have forced you away," Simon finished. I sipped my tea. "Regret? He doesn't regret," I said softly. "He just misses the sister who gave him everything. He misses the convenience I provided, not me." "Did they marry?" I asked. "No," Simon shook his head. "Gary's mom died the year after you left. On her deathbed, she forbade him from marrying Susan, calling her a curse. Gary, worn down by life, actually listened. He never signed the papers." "So what are they?" I asked, finding it ironic. "A cohabiting couple who resent each other," Simon said. "They got what they wanted, living together, only to find that without a servant, their love couldn't withstand dirty dishes." "Sarah," Simon looked at me with pity, "let the past go completely. You're doing well. Don't waste emotion on them." I looked up at the warm sun and smiled genuinely. "Uncle Simon, don't worry. I let go a long time ago." And I had. Hearing their misery brought no pleasure, just a detached calm. They were strangers. In my 3rd year in New York, I hit a career peak. Land's Kitchen couldn't meet demand. With Simon's help, I incorporated and secured angel investment, opening 2 branches in Midtown and the Upper East Side. I built a central kitchen for sauces. My business map was taking shape. I became busy, meetings, reports, negotiations. I learned to wear power suits and heels, dealing with investors and lawyers in fluent English. No one could tell this savvy executive was a dishwasher a few years ago. But success couldn't fill every void. Loneliness hit hard on holidays. On Chinese New Year's Eve, I gave my staff the day off and a bonus, then locked up alone. The streets were festive. Chinatown was loud with drums. But it had nothing to do with me. Back in my empty apartment, I craved pork and chive dumplings, my father's favorite. I made them from scratch, kneading, kneading, chopping, just like I did with my mom. Watching them boil, memories of my past life flashed back. New Year's used to be me serving Gary's huge family while they laughed. I was a spinning top. I thought effort bought love. The fire proved me wrong. Plip. A hot tear hit my hand. For the first time since Rebirth, I cried for myself. The loneliness was overwhelming. No family, no lover, no child. I built a kingdom, but had no one to share it with. I ate the dumplings alone. Outside, a firework exploded. Watching it fade, I had an epiphany. Loneliness is life's norm. In my past life, I used marriage to fake belonging. Now I was lonely but whole. I lived for myself. This loneliness was the price of freedom. I didn't need anyone to validate my worth. I raised a glass to the window, and the woman in the reflection. Happy New Year, Sarah. This is your new life. I slept soundly. I had made peace with solitude. After making peace with loneliness, I became unstoppable. 5 more years passed. Land's Kitchen rode the internet wave, launching online ordering early. I upgraded the central kitchen to a factory, supplying supermarkets. I founded Land's Corporation, expanding into supply chains. I wasn't just a shop owner, I was an entrepreneur. I moved to a penthouse overlooking Central Park. I cut my hair short. My closet was full of designer suits. My circle included professors and artists. I even dated a Columbia philosophy professor. We became great friends. I hadn't thought of Gary or Susan in years. Until one day my assistant Emily knocked. "Miss Sue, reception says a Mr. Gu from China insists on seeing you. He says he's your husband." My pen paused on a contract. "What's his name?" "Gary Gu." I was silent. 8 years. I thought I'd never hear that name again. Emily asked, "Security?" I shook my head. "No. Send him up." I leaned back in my leather chair. I wanted to see him. Not for love, not for apology. I wanted to see what time had done to us. And let him see how ridiculous his "you are nothing without me" curse was. "Emily, make tea. And tell our lawyer Mr. Wong to come in 5 minutes." Gary walked in. He looked older than Simon had described, haggard, stooped, wearing an ill-fitting, dusty suit. He stood in my luxurious office looking like a beggar in a palace. "Sit." I pointed to the sofa. He stared at me, eyes full of shock, regret, and greed. He stumbled forward. "Sarah, is it really you?" "It's me." You're doing." "I'm doing very well." I cut him off. "What do you want?" He stood there, rubbing his hands, then did something unexpected. He knelt. A 50-year-old man, kneeling before the woman he once trampled. "Sarah, I was wrong. Without you, home isn't home. I love you." I watched him like a spectator. He started ranting. "Susan, she's trash. She's lazy, she killed Mom. She cheated. I fought her. Sarah, come back. We'll remarry. You have money now, we can kick Susan out and start over. I'll serve you like a horse." I felt only nausea. I saw the greed. He wasn't repenting, he was drowning and saw me as a life raft. He thought a few tears would make me play the savior again. I stood up and walked to him. "Gary, do you think this money blew in on the wind? Do you know I washed dishes for 16 hours a day? Do you know I bled and sweated to build this?" He stared blankly. "You don't know. You just know I'm rich now and can save you from your mess. You're not here for marriage, you're here for a handout." My words stripped him naked. Emily popped her head in. "Miss Sue, the video conference with Global Capital starts in 5 minutes." I looked down at Gary. "Mr. Gu, you're mistaken. My home is here. You should go back to your garbage heap." I walked to the conference area without looking back. He knelt there, frozen. The meeting started. I pitched my European expansion plan to the investors with confidence and power. I ignored the man kneeling in my office. When the call ended an hour later, Gary was standing by the window looking small. "You walked over. See this?" I pointed at the skyline. "This is my world. No complaints, no petit drama. Just progress." He asked hoarsely, "Do you hate me?" "Hate?" I laughed. "Gary, hate requires energy. You and Susan are just a nightmare I woke up from. People don't hate nightmares." That broke him. He turned, looking for a crack in my mask, but found only calm water. I pressed the intercom. "Emily, show the guest out." Security arrived. Gary slumped, letting them lead him away. At the door, he looked back with total despair. The door closed. I stood in the sunset, bathed in gold. Down on the street, I saw Gary stumble out, squatting on the sidewalk, crying like a child. His pain moved nothing in me. The fire had been my light to nirvana. I heard later that Gary returned to China and drank himself into oblivion. The violence between him and Susan escalated until he pushed her down the stairs, paralyzing her. He went to prison, she lived on charity. They destroyed each other. As for me, Land's Corporation listed on NASDAQ. I made the cover of Forbes. I didn't remarry, but I had family in Simon, Linda, and my team. I started a foundation for women in crisis. I stood at the top of the world, shining my own light. That year, I visited my parents' grave in China. I placed white lilies on the stone. Mom, Dad. I whispered, touching their photos. I'm back. I'm doing well. I didn't let you down. The wind rustled the pines in response. Looking at the blue sky, I knew my life was finally complete.